What's going on, everybody? Rob here, aka Trev2323. Today we are going over a rectifier. You'll find this sitting around right in this area on your wheel horse tractor. This is the rectifier right here, and this is the one with the two on top, one on the bottom. I can tell you that right now. Let's open up the wheel horse right here. Now, out of your Kohler engine, you have two wires. And these, I might say it wrong, but behind this big wheel right here are magnets. And then on the inside against the engine is your stator, your stator. And that's what's, when this is turning, it's sending current to this to charge your battery, okay? Now on the rectifier, this job right here is to turn this alternating current into direct current for your battery, to charge your battery. So these wires that are coming out right here, okay, they just go to the top part of this rectifier. The top part is for your alternating current. Now when you have this running, if it's idling, you may just be getting 10 or 12 volts, but if you put throttle on, this will go up to 15 or 20 volts, and that's what you should be getting out of here and at the top two in here, okay? Now this bottom one right here is for the battery. This goes to charge the battery. Now you could do this two ways, okay? On the back of the ignition switch, I'm gonna do a chart on the back of the ignition switch. It would go into the L or the A, the light or the accessory. The light or the accessory. So it goes into the light or accessory, because if this isn't off, there's no juice going to this or no juice going to the battery. You put this in run accessory. This is now able to get the 12 volt here from the battery, like just a contact to the battery. You never want it in the run position. The run position is only for the starter. One way you could check this out is with a multimeter, and then you put the multimeter to the ground and then touch each one of those, M, L, B, G. Well, G, you're not gonna get nothing. And then, so like if you're an M, you're right here, and you put it in run, you put it in here, you put it on S, and the S should have no power until you hit the start. That's the only way you should get an intermittent when you're on the S. The B, you should have constant. The L or the A should be off right here, 12 volt right there, okay? So this right here, if you're wired it in the ignition and you don't have something for your rectifier in the ignition, this right here, this the bottom one for the B to charge your battery, the bottom one, that goes to what would be the L or the A in the run. This way it's sending power to this, and it's letting this power go to the battery. It's letting this power go to the battery. Now I had to wire this differently because the M was out. It was not working. I tested everyone with my multimeter, which is a different video. The M wasn't working. So my coil positive, since this cannot be straight to the battery, you need to be able to shut this out. I put this to the lights and accessory. Instead of any lights, I have that going to it. Now back to the rectifier. Since I have my lights going to the coil, my accessories going to the coil, this battery I don't want to send to that because I don't want to interrupt this voltage. So on the new one I got a new one in right here, and you see it's all taped up, but this battery right here I have wired into the cable, because this and this cable, this is from the battery on the ignition switch, the B on the ignition switch, and then this is coming from the rectifier, B on the rectifier. These are getting together and they're going to the positive side of the battery. Now you're saying you could get a parasitic drain on this. If you do not have it on the ignition switch and you can't shut it off, you'll get a parasitic drain on this. So this is going straight to the battery. So what I did is I'm putting a shut off switch on the battery. The battery is just having the shut-off switch on the battery, so if I'm not using it, I can disconnect the ground. Therefore, this will not get any power, and I don't have to replace my ignition switch, okay? So these two, there's no such thing as a positive and negative. You're just connecting these to the stratter, to the wires coming out of here. This is for the battery, and the body is used for the ground. So it won't work if you have it sitting here and you're trying. The battery has to be screwed into something to get your ground. Okay, now what I did also here is I put a digital voltmeter. That's a voltmeter, not the old amp meter. That's a voltmeter. Okay, how I wired in my voltmeter, this B right here, this B to the battery, this sends the charge to the battery. It's coming in here, and the line for the voltmeter, the positive for the voltmeter is in here, and it goes right in line with the B that's going to the battery. So the voltmeter positive is in line with the B going to the battery. The voltmeter negative is screwed onto the body because it's just grounding. It's just grounding, so the voltmeter negative is going to the body. So this right here, if I turn the key, it's not going to do anything until I turn the negative on the battery. The voltmeter should light up, it'll turn this on, and it starts sending current to this right here. I hit the start, the S on the ignition, it sends power to right here, which is when the power goes right here, it allows the juice from the battery to go to the starter intermittently to start your engine. Okay, this housing is the ground to the block. Your battery is grounded to the block, so my shut-off switch is going to shut off the ground to the battery, which will turn off all the electrical systems. Okay, so that's how I have this in. These are the stator wire, stratter, however you want to say it. This is the B. Now how to test this: when you have your motor running, with your multimeter, you're touching these two with your multimeter, and you're doing your throttle up and throttle down when it's running, and this will give you a voltage. Okay, now as that is running, if you take that off and you touch this right here with the positive and ground, this right here with the positive to the ground should be giving you around 12 to 14 volts, because this regulates the voltage to not let this go over, I think it's 14.4 volts. But this is what's charging your battery, and this should go to the lights or the accessories on here. But since my M on my ignition switch is out, which sends it to the coil, I'm using my lights and accessories to the coil, and I'm putting this straight into the battery with the battery from the ignition. Like I said, this right here positive is in line with the battery to ignition. The negative is mounted to there. That's explaining the rectifier. I have this rectifier taped like this whole harness because I have it taped actually to the 12 volt meter, because man, these things are so cheap nowadays. They really are so cheap. These things are so cheap. They're not stiff like these. These bend so easy. So I'm hoping none of them slipped off. I got enough contact so I could go ahead and check this out. So we'll go ahead and check this out in a bit. Okay, so far so good. That's mounted in place. These screws right here go to the rectifier, and I have this mounted in here. I put a little plate right here because this 12 volt meter was a lot smaller than the amp meter that was in there. All right, so I got all my wires coming out here, and like I said, they're all taped onto basically the 12 volt meter because I didn't want anything to fall out. I gave myself excess, and I know exactly which ones are going to the engine block, the stator right here. All right, I know which ones are going right here, and then I know these two are going to the battery right here. These are going directly to the positive side of the battery. I'm putting an actual battery hookup right here, but I left this because I didn't know where this was going to go, where this was going to be hooked to, so I probably will just zip tie it to up here. is basically what I'm probably gonna do. You know, these things shake so damn much and rattle, so you know it's terrible that the clips on here were just so, like, these right here are stiff, and on the new one they felt like about 4 pieces of foil that you could just kind of mess around with. So I don't got the battery for this yet, so I'm gonna go ahead and get my battery from the basement and we're gonna hook this up. All right, here's my Astro AI meter. Volts under 200 is what I'm hooking this up to. There's nothing on there right now. This is the battery. So the positive of the battery is going to the positive right here. Then this main positive right here is going to your starter solenoid. Starter solenoid, okay? Now, I gotta bring the battery closer because don't forget, this is the rectifier, and this is the rectifier and the battery from the ignition switch. Alright, I don't got the rectifier one hooked up so I could test it. Now I know I have amperage coming out of these. These will be cut down. These two right here are the top two on the rectifier, and they're going to the engine. Alright, so lastly, I got the negative to the, you gotta ground this to the somewhere, and I've been grounding it to the battery box. If it's not grounded right, you won't get spark or start. So you gotta ground that to the battery, and then ground this to the negative. Now your tractor's live, okay? Now I know I put everything together except this fuel pump. So I know I'm gonna have to do the fuel pump because I got a leak right there. And the gasket, I could go right here, and I feel that this is the fuel pump that is leaking, so I gotta get that straightened out. And I'm gonna open up, this thing stinks, so I'm gonna open up the garage door some before we crank it over and I show you everything. Well, let's see. With that hooked up, we should be able to get 12 volt to the rectifier. We'll check that out right now. Okay, that's coming from the rectifier right there. 12 volt is actually hooked up into the, I don't know if you can see that right there. 12 volt is hooked up into it. Nothing's coming through it. So I wonder if it's just a one-way. Nothing's coming through the rectifier. Oh, yeah, that's the rectifier. Nothing's coming through the rectifier. So I wonder if it's only one way. So we'll check it out when we start the van. The tractor. Open up the choke all the way. Alright, the throttle's a little bit on. A little more gas. Normally when I start smelling gas, I know it's going to turn on. I'm getting too much gas. Take down the choke some. The positive popped off. Told you they shake a lot. The positive popped right off of that one. I had the choke closed for it to start. Alright, no voltage coming out of this where I should be getting something out of this. But what I've noticed also is, okay, now the 12 volt meter is on. The 12 volt meter wasn't on. So let's see if we... Okay, so if you've seen, this battery is at 26 or 27 volts right here. I had to have the rectifier plugged in order for this to register and this to go on. So this is a parasitic drain right here. Okay. So that's why I got an on and off switch for the battery. Now I had this on and it was at 25, 26, 25, 26. I shut it off, it's at 26. Although the battery itself is registering at 27 volts. So this is keeping, the rectifier is keeping this at 12 volts. Alright, see, this was going down 12.4 in an idle, and then when I went off of idle, it went back up to 12.6. So just on idle, this is going out. This is not charging the battery, because just on idle, it's not charging the battery. So I'm going to go show you how I have this all hooked up, and now I need to measure that to get the battery in. I have one brand new battery cable that I made, which is going to go to the mount right there on the frame. And then I'm gonna have to make another negative that's gonna go to the shutoff switch to shut the negative off. So if you see, now this rectifier is still on and the voltage regulator is still on. But if I take off the negative, everything's off. The whole engine's off. Then you don't get the parasitic drain. And that's just how I'm doing it because my ignition switch isn't right. Alright, so I just idled it and it was going all the way up to 12.6 with it idling. But the ignition switch popped off. So let me go over all this electricity with you. This is ready to be buttoned up. I need the battery. I got to take the battery measurements. And if you watch my videos, I explain what the spring is across right here. And I got to do this wire right here. I got to really mount this Chinese carburetor. I got to wash out the filter. And I got to replace the damper for the valves. It's not the fuel pump that's leaking, it's the damper for the valves that are leaking. Alright, so with the key in, I shut off the gas valve, and then I shut off the battery. Power's off, gas is off. This actually works really good. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and put the battery charger on it because I know the stratter needs to be worked on. I'm going to replace the stratter tomorrow, but it is done. Next we're going to go ahead and get the, I loosened this up. Next we're going to go ahead and get the tow hitch fabricated and put on, and then we're going to see if we can move that bolt with it. Talk to you later. Subscribe, like, and share.